Jack Morrison's food truck wasn't making much money that morning at Riverside Park. Times were tough for this single dad, and today's chili sales barely covered his costs. Then he heard the screams. 2 children had fallen into the rushing river. Without thinking, Jack jumped in. The current was strong, but somehow he reached them. His muscles burned as he fought the water, holding both kids tight. He didn't know these weren't just any children. He didn't know their mother was watching from her luxury car nearby. He didn't know this moment would change everything. But as he pulled them to safety, one question remained. Could a simple act of courage bridge the gap between 2 very different worlds? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 hours earlier, Jack Morrison had stood in his cramped kitchen, squinting at the faded photograph propped against the coffee maker. Sarah's smile still brightened the worn edges of the picture, her arms cradling baby Emma, while he stood beside them, younger and more hopeful. 5 years had passed since the cancer took her, but some mornings the loss felt as fresh as yesterday. "Dad, have you seen my science notebook?" Emma's voice carried from her bedroom, pulling him back to the present. At 12, she was becoming more like her mother every day. Same determined chin, same brilliant mind. "Check under your history textbook," he called back, turning to flip the pancakes. They were the cheap mix kind, not the from-scratch ones Sarah used to make, but he'd mastered the art of adding just enough cinnamon to make them special. Emma bounded into the kitchen, her dark hair escaping a hasty ponytail. The science notebook was clutched triumphantly in her hand. "Found it! But, Dad, I still need the materials for my project. The fair's in 2 weeks." Jack's stomach tightened. The science fair project, testing water quality in different parts of the city. The test kits alone would cost more than today's likely food truck earnings. "We'll figure something out, kiddo. Maybe we can talk to your teacher about alternatives." "But this could help people," Emma persisted, sliding onto a kitchen stool. "What if we could show which neighborhoods have unsafe water, like where Tommy's family lives? His mom always buys bottled water because she doesn't trust the tap." Jack set a plate of pancakes in front of her, his chest aching with pride and worry. "You've really thought this through, haven't you? Mom would have wanted to help people too, right?" Emma's fingers found the edge of the photograph, touching it gently. "You always say she was a researcher before she chose us instead," Jack finished softly. The memory was clear. Sarah leaving her promising career to start a family, insisting that some experiments were more important than others. They'd had plans to open a restaurant together, combining his cooking with her scientific precision. The food truck was all that remained of that dream. Emma ate quickly, glancing at the clock. "We're going to be late for setup." "Not if we take the shortcut through the park." Jack grabbed his worn apron from its hook. The Morrison's home cooking logo was fading, but the words were still legible. He tucked the photograph into its usual spot in his wallet. A habit he couldn't break, even after all these years. The walk to Riverside Park was their daily ritual. Emma would point out interesting rocks or plants, sometimes stopping to take notes for her other science projects. Today, she was unusually quiet, lost in thoughts about the upcoming fair. "Hey," Jack nudged her shoulder. "Remember what Mom used to say about problems?" Emma's face brightened. "They're just solutions waiting to be discovered." "That's right. And we'll discover a solution for your project too. Promise." They reached the usual spot where the food truck was parked. Jack's regular helper, Mike, had called in sick again. The 3rd time this month. Another problem waiting for a solution. As Emma helped him with the morning setup, Jack caught her staring at the neighboring food trucks with their shiny new equipment and professional signage. His second-hand truck, with its temperamental grill, suddenly felt shabby in comparison. "Dad?" Emma's voice was hesitant. What if I helped more? I could learn the register or maybe take orders." Jack stopped wiping down the counter. "You help plenty already, sweetheart. Your job is to be a kid and do well in school. That's what Mom would have wanted." The morning crowd was starting to trickle in, office workers seeking coffee, joggers wanting protein smoothies. Jack tied his apron with practiced movements, pushing away thoughts of bills and broken equipment and science fair projects. Right now, he had chili to prepare and customers to serve. Emma gathered her backpack, heading for school. "See you at 3. Study hard," he called after her. "And Emma?" She turned back. "We'll figure it out. We always do." Watching her disappear down the park path, Jack touched his wallet where the photograph lay hidden. "We're doing okay, aren't we, Sarah?" he whispered. "Mostly okay." The morning sun warmed his face as he began another day of trying his best to prove those words true. Sophie Chen stood in her penthouse kitchen, watching her twins stuff matching Gucci backpacks with books and toys. Alexander and Alice, perfect mirrors of each other at 8 years old, had insisted on bringing their entire science kit to the park. Their enthusiasm for experiments reminded her too much of their father, another brilliant mind who'd left them for the next big discovery. "Mommy, can we bring the microscope too?" Alice held up the professional-grade instrument, her eyes bright with hope. "Darling, we discussed this. The park is for outdoor activities." Sophie straightened Alice's collar, a habit she'd developed to keep her hands busy when saying no. "Besides, your new tutor is coming this afternoon. But we want to study the pond organisms," Alexander chimed in, his voice carrying the same determination that had built Sophie's tech empire. "Like real scientists." Sophie checked her watch, a rare vintage piece worth more than most cars. Being CEO of Chentech meant every minute was scheduled, coordinated, optimized. But lately, she'd been questioning all that efficiency. The twins were growing up in a world of appointments and achievements, their childhood measured in milestones, rather than memories. "Tell you what," she compromised, "we'll bring the collection jars, but the microscope stays home." "Deal." The twins exchanged one of their silent looks, the kind that made Sophie wonder if they had their own private language. "Deal," they chorused. Her phone buzzed, another crisis at the office. The board was pushing back on her latest renewable energy initiative, claiming it was too risky. They'd been increasingly difficult since her divorce, as if a single mother couldn't possibly handle both family and business. "Mrs. Chen?" Her housekeeper Maria appeared with fresh pressed juice. "The car is ready whenever you are." Sophie nodded, taking a sip of the green concoction. "What would I do without you, Maria?" "Probably hire someone else," the older woman smiled, but her eyes were kind. She'd been with them since the twins were born, the only constant presence besides Sophie herself. Alexander tugged at Sophie's silk blouse. "Can we take the path by the food trucks? There's one that makes the best hot chocolate." "Hot chocolate?" Sophie raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you know about food trucks?" "Maria took us last week, when you had the late meeting," Alice explained. "The man there was really nice. He let us watch him cook." Sophie shot Maria a questioning look. The housekeeper shrugged. "They were missing you." The park seemed better than another evening with the iPad tutor. A familiar guilt tugged at Sophie's heart. Last week's late meeting had actually been a lonely dinner in her office, staring at spreadsheets and avoiding another empty evening at home. The twins had their friends from private school, their activities, their lessons. But sometimes she caught them watching other families in the park with longing eyes. "The trucks aren't exactly health certified," Sophie hesitated. "Why don't we stop at that new organic cafe instead?" "It's not the same," Alexander pouted. "The food truck man tells stories while he cooks. He said his daughter is doing a science. A project too." Sophie helped them with their backpacks, noticing how the designer labels seemed at odds with their excited chatter about street food and pond water. Perhaps she'd been too focused on giving them everything she'd lacked in her own childhood, the best schools, the finest clothes, the most exclusive opportunities. But what about the simple joys she remembered from her early days in Taiwan, before her parents' business success changed everything? "All right," she conceded. "We can walk by the food trucks, but first sunscreen." The twins groaned but submitted to her methodical application. As she worked, Sophie noticed their matching backpacks were already scuffed, despite being barely a month old. They were living, growing children, not the perfect porcelain dolls she sometimes felt pressured to present to the world. Her phone buzzed again. The board could wait. This morning belonged to her children, food trucks and all. The morning had warmed enough for Jack to roll up his sleeves, revealing the scratched face of his father's old Timex. The watch wasn't worth much, but it had marked every important moment of his life. Graduation, wedding, Emma's birth. Now, it kept time for another day of serving comfort food to strangers. He was stirring the chili when he heard it. A splash, followed by screams that made his blood run cold. "Alexander!" a woman's voice, raw with terror. "Alice!" Jack's body moved before his mind could process the scene. He vaulted over the counter, catching glimpses of thrashing water and small hands breaking the surface. The river had swollen with spring rains. Its normally gentle current turned treacherous. His father's watch ticked against his wrist as he ran. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Time stretched like taffy. The first child, a boy, was closer. Jack plunged into the water, gasping at the shocking cold. The current immediately grabbed him, trying to sweep his feet out from under him, but years of hauling supplies and maneuvering his food truck had built strength in his arms and shoulders. "I've got you," he grunted, reaching the boy. "Hold on to my neck." The child coughed but managed to grip him. Jack could see the second child, a girl, being pulled. Further downstream, his heart hammered. The current was stronger here, the water deeper. "Help her!" the boy choked out. "She's my sister!" Jack's legs burned as he pushed against the current. The girl had gone under. 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. His father's watch kept counting while his mind screamed that every second could be the difference between life and death. There, a flash of pink jacket. Jack lunged forward, his free arm shooting into the water. His fingers caught fabric, then an arm. He pulled, muscles straining, until the girl's face broke the surface. She gasped, coughing up river water. "Hold on tight, both of you," he ordered, fighting to keep all three of them above water. The current wrapped around them like a living thing trying to drag them under. Jack's shoes scraped against rocks, searching for purchase. On the shore, he could hear shouting. Someone was calling emergency services. A woman, probably the children's mother, was crying out in both English and what sounded like Mandarin. 8 seconds, 9 seconds, 10 seconds. The watch kept ticking even as water seeped into its aged mechanics. The shore seemed miles away. Jack's legs trembled with effort. The children's combined weight and wet clothes pulled at him while the current did its best to sweep them all downstream. But giving up wasn't an option. He thought of Emma, of how someone else might have needed to save her if things had been different. "Almost there," he gasped, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring the twins or himself. The boy had started crying quietly against his neck. The girl hadn't made a sound since coming up for air. Finally, his feet found solid ground. Hands reached out to help, park visitors and other food truck vendors who had seen the drama unfold. Jack's legs gave out as soon as the twins were safely pulled from his arms. He collapsed onto the rocky shore, chest heaving. "My babies!" The woman's voice was closer now. Through water-blurred eyes, Jack saw an elegantly dressed Asian woman gathering both children into her arms, her designer outfit getting soaked as she held them. "Mommy!" the girl coughed, speaking at last. "We just wanted to see the ducks up close." "The bank was slippery," the boy added, hiccuping through tears. Jack sat up slowly, his body already aching. Water dripped from his clothes, forming puddles on the ground. His father's watch had stopped, its face foggy with moisture. The time frozen at 10:47 a.m., the moment he'd jumped in after the twins. "Sir?" A paramedic was kneeling beside him. "We need to check you out, too." Jack tried to wave them off. "I'm fine, just need to get back to my truck." "Please," the children's mother spoke. She had shifted to reveal an aristocratic face marked by tears and smeared makeup. "Let them examine you, I insist." Their eyes met, and Jack saw something that made him pause, not just gratitude, but a deep understanding of what had nearly been lost. He nodded slowly, too exhausted to argue. His father's watch remained silent on his wrist, marking the moment, when one man's ordinary morning had turned extraordinary. Jack shifted uncomfortably in the hard hospital chair, his clothes still damp. A glossy business magazine caught his eye from the waiting room table. Chentech Revolution. How Sophie Chen's green innovation is changing the world. The woman from the cover was sitting across from him now, her silk blouse water-stained, her perfect makeup streaked with tears and river water. "Your children," Jack cleared his throat. "Are they being examined?" Sophie answered, her eyes fixed on the emergency room doors. "The doctors say they should be fine, thanks to you." She turned to face him fully. "I don't even know your name." Jack Morrison." He ran a hand through his wet hair. "I should call my daughter's school. Let them know I won't be there for pickup." "Of course. Please, use my phone." Sophie pulled out the latest Chentech smartphone, her company's flagship product, Jack now realized. "And let me have someone collect your daughter, my driver." "No, that's—" Jack hesitated, pride warring with practicality. "I can call her usual sitter." The emergency room doors opened. The twins burst out, now dressed in hospital scrubs that made them look even younger. They made a beeline for their mother, but then Alexander stopped, tugging his sister's sleeve. "You're the food truck man," he exclaimed. "The one with the stories." Alice nodded eagerly. "We tried to tell Mommy about your hot chocolate, but then we saw the ducks and—" "Alexander, Alice." Sophie's voice was gentle but firm. "What you did was very dangerous. You could have—" Her voice caught. "I'm sorry, Mommy," they said in unison, shoulders drooping. A nurse appeared with discharge papers, and Jack used the moment to step away and call Emma's school. When he returned, he found the twins peppering the nurse with questions about river bacteria and water safety protocols. "They're certainly curious," he commented. Sophie's smile was proud but tired. "Too curious sometimes. They get that from—" She stopped, something clouding her expression. "They love science, even if it leads to misadventures. My Emma's the—" "Same way," Jack said. "She's working on this water quality project." He caught himself. Why was he sharing this with a billionaire tech CEO? But Sophie was listening intently. Water quality. "Alexander, Alice, isn't that similar to your school project?" The twins perked up. "We're testing different filtration methods," Alexander announced. "Emma's testing water from different neighborhoods," Jack explained, surprised by their shared interest. "Though we're still figuring out the equipment." "Mommy has a whole laboratory!" Alice bounced excitedly. "With real scientists. And everything." "Alice," Sophie cautioned, but her eyes had taken on a thoughtful look. "Mr. Morrison, Jack, please let me do something to thank you. If your daughter needs lab equipment—" "I couldn't," Jack interrupted. "Really, anyone would have done the same." "No," Sophie said quietly. "They wouldn't have." She glanced at her children, who were now showing the nurse their pruned fingers with scientific fascination. "At least let me replace your watch. I noticed it stopped working." Jack's hand went to his father's Timex. "It's not about the watch." A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Emma burst in, her school backpack still on, followed by an apologetic-looking nurse. "Dad!" She threw herself at him, then pulled back at his wet clothes. "The school said you were in the hospital. Are you okay? What happened?" Before Jack could answer, the twins rushed over. "Your dad's a hero," they announced in excited stereo. "He saved us from the river." Emma's eyes widened as she looked between the twins, her father and Sophie, who was watching the scene with an unreadable expression. "Dad?" Emma's voice held a million questions. Jack managed a tired smile. "It's quite a story, kiddo. One that starts with a couple of young scientists getting too close to their research subject." The twins giggled, and even Sophie's composed face softened. The magazine on the table seemed to mock the scene, its polished corporate image. at odds with this messy, emotional moment in a hospital waiting room. "Perhaps," Sophie said carefully, "we could continue this conversation somewhere more comfortable. I believe I owe your father a proper thank you, and it seems we have some young scientists who might benefit from collaboration." Jack looked at Emma, saw the hope blooming in her eyes as she chatted with the twins about their shared interests. His wet clothes were becoming uncomfortable, his muscles ached, and his pride was putting up its usual fight. But sometimes he thought, touching his silent watch, time had a way of presenting unexpected opportunities. The next morning, Jack stared at the elegant business card in his hand. The raised silver text caught the early light. Sophie Chen, CEO, Chen Tech Industries. Below the corporate logo, she'd handwritten her personal number and a note. "For a fellow parent who understands what matters most." "Is that from the twins, Mom?" Emma asked, peering over his shoulder as she packed her school bag. "Are you going to call her?" "It's complicated, kiddo." Jack tucked the card into his wallet next to Sarah's photo. "Besides, we've got a truck to run." But when they arrived at their usual spot in Riverside Park, they found a small crowd gathered. A sleek coffee cart had been set up next to Jack's. Weathered truck with a handwritten sign, "Free drinks today in honor of yesterday's hero." Maria, the twins' housekeeper, waved from behind the cart. "Mr. Morrison, the twins insisted on helping." Alexander and Alice poked their heads out, wearing mini aprons over their private school uniforms. "We made hot chocolate," Alexander announced, proudly. "With real Belgian chocolate," Alice added, "like you showed us." Jack's protest died on his lips as he saw Emma's face light up at the sight of the twins. They'd exchanged phone numbers at the hospital, and she'd talked about them all. "Evening. Mom said we could help before school," Alexander explained, "since your truck might need cleaning after, you know." Jack glanced at his truck. Someone had already pressure-washed it, and the morning prep work was done. Even his temperamental grill had been expertly serviced. "I can't accept," he began. "Accept what?" Sophie appeared, dressed more casually than yesterday, but still radiating elegance. "My children wanted to help the man who saved their lives. I merely provided transportation and hot chocolate supplies." She smiled at Emma. "And I heard someone might be interested in our lab's water testing equipment." Emma bounced on her toes. "Really? You mean it?" "Dad," Alice tugged at Jack's sleeve, "can we show Emma our science kit? Please." The children's enthusiasm was infectious. Jack watched as they huddled together, Emma explaining her project while the twins offered suggestions with the confident authority of 8-year-olds. "They're good for each other," Sophie observed softly. "My two have all the equipment they could want, but they've never had this." She gestured at the easy camaraderie developing between the children. A couple of Emma's school friends had arrived, drawn by the unusual scene, and the twins were eagerly incorporating them into their impromptu science meeting. "Ms. Chen," Jack started. "Sophie, please." "Sophie, I appreciate everything, but I can't let you disrupt your morning like this. You must have meetings, responsibilities." She pulled out her phone, showing him her calendar. "See this morning's entry. It says, 'Thank the man who gave my children a future.' That's my only responsibility right now." A customer approached, and Jack automatically moved toward his truck. But Maria was already handling the order with professional efficiency. "Just for today," Sophie said, reading his expression. "Let us help. And maybe," she hesitated, "maybe we could discuss how to make sure Emma's project gets the resources it deserves." Jack thought of the pride in Emma's voice when she talked. About helping other neighborhoods, about making a difference. It was the same passion he'd heard in Sarah's voice years ago. "I was thinking," Sophie continued carefully, "Chentech's educational foundation could sponsor some student science projects. Completely merit-based, of course. Emma's work on water quality would be exactly the kind of initiative we support." She was offering him a way to accept help without compromising his dignity. Jack looked at the business card again, at the personal note she'd written, then at the children, already planning their next experiment together. "One condition," He said finally. The kids do the work themselves. No corporate labs taking over. Sophie's smile was warm. Agreed. Though I should warn you, once those three get started, we might need to supervise some of their more ambitious ideas. As if on cue, they heard Alexander explaining something about molecular filtration, while Emma and Alice scribbled notes, with increasing excitement. What have we just agreed to? Jack laughed, surprising himself. Sophie's eyes crinkled. I believe, Mr. Morrison, we've just agreed to let our children teach us a thing or two about breaking down barriers. Over the next 2 weeks, Jack's handwritten menu board became a diary of unexpected changes. Alongside his usual comfort foods, new items appeared. Alexander's special hot chocolate and Alice's science fair smoothie. The twins had insisted on contributing their own creations, tested and approved during their now regular visits. You added ginger, Sophie observed one morning, sipping her coffee at the small table Jack had set up beside the truck. She'd started arriving earlier each day, claiming the morning park air helped her think. The twins mentioned you like it, Jack replied, trying to sound casual. He didn't add that he'd specially ordered the premium Korean ginger she'd grown. Up with, after overhearing a conversation between her and Maria. The morning crowd had shifted too. Sophie's presence attracted a different clientele. Corporate types who might have never noticed his truck before. But Jack made sure his regular customers still felt welcome, especially the construction workers and students who'd supported him through leaner times. Dad, Emma called from inside the truck, the water samples are ready. She'd set up a mini lab in the truck's corner, her science project evolving beyond anything they'd originally imagined. The twins hovered nearby, their private school uniforms slightly rumpled from their enthusiastic assistance. Remember the control group, Alexander advised seriously. And document everything, Alice added, holding up her tablet to record their observations. Sophie watched the children work, a soft expression on her face. They've never been this excited about their studies before. Emma either, Jack admitted, though I'm a bit worried about their latest idea to map the entire city's water supply. Too ambitious? Too expensive. The testing kits alone. Sophie straightened, recognizing her cue. They'd developed an unspoken dance around these moments, her offering help, him hesitating, them finding middle ground. The Foundation's grant committee meets next week, she mentioned. I hear there's a very impressive proposal from some young scientists. Jack's pride warred briefly with practicality. Emma worked hard on that application. She did. No help. From any corporate labs as promised. Sophie's eyes twinkled. Though I can't guarantee the committee won't be slightly biased by their daily hot chocolate deliveries. The twins had made it their mission to bring samples to the Chen Tech offices, proudly wearing the Morrison's home cooking aprons. Jack had gotten them. The security guards now knew them by name. Speaking of deliveries, Jack gestured to his menu, your board members seem to enjoy Tuesday's special. Ah, yes, the corporate crisis comfort chili. They've started scheduling difficult meetings on Tuesdays specifically. They shared a laugh, comfortable in a way that still surprised Jack. Sophie checked her watch, the expensive one she wore despite having a phone that could tell time in multiple zones. I should go. Board meeting at 9. The usual order? She nodded, and Jack began preparing her team's lunch delivery. Another new addition to his routine, feeding the executives, who once wouldn't have glanced at a food truck menu. Jack? Sophie paused, fiddling with her cup. The twins' school has a family science night next week. They'd love it if Emma could come. And you, of course. The invitation hung between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. Jack glanced at the children, so absorbed in their work they hadn't noticed the sudden tension in the adults' conversation. Their father usually attends, Sophie added quietly, but he's in Singapore for a research project. Sophie, I just think about it. She gathered her things, every movement graceful despite her obvious discomfort. No pressure. The twins will understand if we'll come. The words surprised them both. Sophie's smile bloomed slowly, transforming her entire face. Really, but I'm bringing food. Can't let those private school parents think food trucks aren't good enough for their gatherings. I wouldn't dream of it. Sophie's eyes sparkled. In fact, I hear the headmaster is particularly fond of comfort food. As she walked away, Jack found himself adding a new item to his menu board. Family Science Night Special, coming soon. The twins cheered from their corner, and Emma's grin was brighter than the morning sun. Even Maria, restocking the coffee cart, gave him an approving nod. Some menus, Jack realized, were about more than just food. The science fair flyer on Jack's truck window seemed to mock him. Brighton Academy Family Science Night, where future innovators share their discoveries. He adjusted his tie, borrowed from a neighbor, and checked his reflection in the truck's side mirror. "Dad, stop fidgeting," Emma said, emerging from the back in a new dress Sophie had helped her pick. "You look fine." "Fine enough for Brighton Academy." He gestured at the elegant building before them, where luxury cars were already pulling up to the valet station. "You look perfect," came Sophie's voice. She appeared beside his truck, the twins bouncing excitedly beside her. "And your food smells amazing." Jack had spent hours preparing everything. Sliders with homemade brioche buns, miniature versions of his famous chili, delicate appetizers that married his comfort food style with upscale presentation. The twins had helped design the menu, insisting that their classmates would love fancy food truck food. "The setup's inside," Sophie guided them through a side entrance, away from the main crowd. "I thought it might be easier." She'd thought of everything, creating a buffer between his world and hers. Jack wasn't sure whether to be grateful or uncomfortable about that. The school's massive auditorium had been transformed into a showcase of student projects. Professional display boards and elaborate experiments filled the space. Emma's modest table seemed out of place until you looked closer at her actual work. "Your data analysis is remarkable," commented a man in an expensive suit examining Emma's water quality findings. "Have you considered expanding the testing parameters?" "Actually, yes," Emma lit up. "Alexander and Alice helped me identify additional metrics we could track. See these correlation patterns." The twins jumped in, explaining their contributions with infectious enthusiasm. Jack noticed Sophie tense slightly. The man was her ex-husband, Dr. James Chen, recently returned from Singapore. "Fascinating," Dr. Chen mused. "The methodology is quite sophisticated for your age level." "That's because they did it themselves," Jack spoke up quietly. "No lab assistants, just real kids asking real questions." Dr. Chen turned, seeming to notice Jack for the first time. "Ah, you must be the food truck owner I've heard so much about." "Dad saved us," Alexander announced proudly. "And his food is better than any restaurant," Alice added. Dr. Chen's expression flickered. "Yes, well, speaking of food," he glanced at his watch. "I should make my rounds. Sophie, we'll discuss the twins' summer schedule later." After he left, Sophie touched Jack's arm. "I'm sorry about that." "Don't be. I'm used to people making assumptions." "Well, I assume you're about to prove them all wrong." Sophie nodded toward the growing line at his food station. The headmasters already had 3 sliders. The evening evolved into something unexpected. Parents who might never have visited a food truck were raving about Jack's cuisine. Emma's project drew serious attention from science teachers and professionals. The twins flitted between both worlds effortlessly, proud tour guides bridging the gap. "Mr. Morrison?" The headmaster approached, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. "I understand you've been helping with our students' research methodology?" "Oh, I just provide the space," Jack demurred. "The kids do all the work." "Space, encouragement, and apparently excellent food." The headmaster smiled. "We've been looking to expand our STEM program's community involvement. Perhaps we could discuss some possibilities." Sophie, appearing with perfect timing, added, "Jack's truck has become quite the laboratory, and his approach to hands-on learning." As they talked, Jack watched Emma explaining her findings to a group of younger students. She stood tall, confident, her father's borrowed tie now around her neck like a badge of honor. The twins flanked her like protective siblings, fielding questions and sharing credit. Later, helping Emma pack up her project, Jack found a note tucked into the science fair flyer. Sophie's elegant handwriting read, "Some barriers are only as solid as we believe them to be." "Dad," Emma held up her project's conclusion board. "Can we really keep working with other schools? The twins said their dad might know some people." Jack looked at Sophie, who was unsuccessfully trying to prevent the twins from eating their fourth slider of the night. She caught his eye and smiled, a real smile, not her polished CEO version. "Yeah, kiddo," he said, "I think we can figure something out." The antique tea set sat between them on Sophie's penthouse balcony, steam rising from delicate porcelain cups. Jack watched as she performed the ceremony with practiced grace, each movement precise and meaningful. "My grandmother taught me," Sophie explained, her usual corporate efficiency replaced by something softer. She said tea ceremonies aren't about the tea, they're about making time stand still. The twins and Emma were inside, supposedly doing homework but mostly giggling over their latest science experiments. The sounds of their laughter drifted out to the balcony, mixing with the evening air. "Sarah would have loved this," Jack said quietly, accepting the cup Sophie offered. "She always wanted Emma to know more about her Chinese heritage." Sophie's hands stilled. It was the first time he'd mentioned his late wife so directly. "Emma told me her mother was Chinese-American, third generation. She always regretted not learning more of the language, the traditions." Jack smiled at a memory. "She used to ask the owners of our local Chinese restaurant to teach her proper pronunciation. And now Emma's learning from the twins," Sophie observed. "I heard them teaching her counting earlier." The tea was unlike anything Jack had tasted, subtle, complex, telling a story with each sip, like the woman serving it. "I've been thinking about your proposal," Sophie said carefully, "about expanding the food truck business." After the science fair, several parents had approached Jack about catering private events. The headmaster had even suggested a regular lunch service for the school. "It's a big step," Jack admitted. "New equipment, staff, licenses. The foundation could—" "Sophie," she set down her cup. "Right, no corporate rescue missions, but maybe a partnership? Your recipes, your leadership with some strategic investment." Inside, Emma shrieked with laughter at something the twins had done. The sound made both adults smile. "They're good for each other," Jack said, echoing Sophie's words from weeks ago. "They are." Sophie began preparing a second pot of tea, her movements meditative. "When the twins' father left, I worried they'd grow up isolated. All they had was each other. And now they have Emma, and Emma has them." Jack watched the careful way Sophie handled her grandmother's tea set. Life has a way of building unexpected families. Their eyes met over the steam of the tea. Something shifted in the air. Between them, warm and tentative as a spring breeze. The moment was broken by Maria's arrival with a tray of food. Jack had insisted on cooking, combining his comfort food style with Chinese ingredients Sophie had helped him source. Scallion, pancakes with a Western twist, dumplings filled with his signature chili, fusion dishes that represented both their worlds. "This is incredible," Sophie said after tasting the dumplings. "You should add these to your menu." Already planning to, the twins helped develop the recipe. Jack grinned, though they were more interested in the scientific aspects of dough, elasticity than the actual cooking. "Speaking of science," Sophie hesitated. "James, Dr. Chen, asked about their summer schedule again. He wants to enroll them in an advanced program in Singapore." Jack felt an unexpected pang. "For how long?" "The whole summer." Sophie traced the pattern on her teacup. "I usually let them go, but this year they're begging to stay. They don't want to miss Emma's water quality project expansion." "And what do you want?" The question seemed to surprise her. Sophie looked out over the city lights, her profile elegant against the darkening sky. "I want them to be happy, to have real friendships, not just academic achievements. To know that success isn't just measured in test scores and stock prices." She turned back to him. "What about you, Jack? What do you want?" The tea set gleamed in the soft lighting. its patterns telling stories of tradition and change, of old ways meeting new, like them, sitting here creating something that didn't fit any conventional pattern. He began, but was interrupted by a crash from inside, followed by 3 distinct voices exclaiming, "Oops!" They rushed in to find a failed experiment involving baking soda, vinegar, and what looked like half the kitchen. The children stood frozen, covered in foam, wearing matching expressions of scientific fascination and slight guilt. "We were testing pressure variables," Emma explained. "For the food truck menu," Alexander added quickly. "It's all documented." Alice held up her tablet, protected in its waterproof case. Jack and Sophie looked at each other, and suddenly they were both laughing. The children's surprise at their reaction only made them laugh harder. "Maybe," Jack said when he caught his breath, "this is exactly what I want." Sophie's smile told him she understood completely. The tabloid appeared on Jack's truck counter early Monday morning. Chentec, CEO's new recipe for love, billionaire secret romance with food truck hero. Below the sensational headline was a grainy photo of Sophie at his truck, the twins, and Emma visible in the background. "Dad?" Emma's voice wavered as she read the article. "They're saying mean things about us." Jack quickly folded the paper, but the damage was done. Words like gold digger and social climbing burned in his memory. His phone buzzed with messages from old friends and regular customers, all asking if it was true. The morning crowd was different too. Photographers lurked behind trees, trying to catch a glimpse of the rags to riches romance. Some customers came just to stare, not bothering to order. Mike, his occasional helper who'd been increasingly unreliable, showed up unexpectedly. "Hey boss, thought you might need help with all the attention." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "By the way, some reporters were asking about you. Offered good money for inside stories." Jack's stomach turned. "Mike, whatever they're offering..." "Relax. I didn't tell them anything." Mike tied on his apron. "Yet." Before Jack could respond, a sleek car pulled up. Sophie emerged, looking impeccable despite the strain around her eyes. The photographers immediately surged forward. "Miss Chen! Is it true about you and the food truck owner? What does your board think about this relationship? Are the children being affected by the class difference?" Sophie walked through them with practiced calm, but Jack saw how tightly she gripped her purse. The twins followed, unusually subdued, pressing close to their mother. "I'm sorry," Sophie said quietly when she reached the truck. "I should have expected this." "Not your fault." Jack handed her the usual morning coffee. Cameras clicked rapidly at the simple gesture. "Actually," Mike interrupted, "this could be good for business. Maybe we could do some interviews. Really milk the whole Cinderella angle. That's enough." Jack's voice was firm. "Take the rest of the day off, Mike." "But now!" Mike left, but his calculating expression suggested this wouldn't be the last of it. Emma had wrapped her arms around the twins, all 3 children huddled together against the unwanted attention. "We don't care what they say," Alice announced, though her lower lip trembled. "Yeah," Alexander added, "you're our hero no matter." "What they write?" Jack's phone rang, the headmaster of Brighton Academy, probably calling about the scandal affecting his prestigious school. On Sophie's phone, board members were sending urgent messages about emergency meetings. "Perhaps we should..." Sophie began hesitantly. "Step back?" Jack finished. The words tasted bitter. "No!" All 3 children protested at once. Sophie's face softened as she looked at them. Then, to Jack's surprise, she pulled out her phone and began dialing. "Maria, please bring the other package." "Yes, now." Minutes later, Maria arrived with a large bag. Sophie withdrew a stack of papers, spreading them on the truck's counter. "What are those?" Jack asked. "Articles about me, from when I first took over Chentec." She pointed to headlines. "Too young, too female, can Chen save family empire?" And "Beauty over brains, Chentec's risky future." "They tried to define me," Sophie said quietly. "To make me fit their narrative. I proved them wrong by staying true to myself." She looked at Jack. "I won't let them do this to us." Us? The word held volumes of questions. Before she could answer, a sharp voice cut through the morning air. Well, this is quite a scene. Dr. James Chen stood at the edge of the crowd, disapproval radiating from his expensive suit. The photographers swung their cameras toward this new development. Dad. The twins' voices were uncertain. I came to discuss your summer plans, Dr. Chen said. But perhaps we should talk about more immediate concerns. Sophie, the board is waiting. And you, he turned to Jack, surely you understand this. Association has gone far enough. Jack felt Emma's hand slip into his. Sophie stood frozen, caught between her ex-husband's corporate world and the messy, real life she'd been building with them. The tabloid lay on the counter between them all, its sensational headlines trying to reduce their complex relationship to simple sensation. But nothing about their connection, born of a river rescue, strengthened by children's laughter and deepened over cups of tea, could be captured in mere headlines. The corporate document lay open on Sophie's desk. Emergency board meeting resolution, vote of no confidence in current leadership. The formal language couldn't disguise the threat. They wanted her out, and they were using her relationship with Jack as ammunition. Your personal choices reflect poor judgment, board member Harrison was saying. The company's image? Sophie interrupted, her voice steel-wrapped in silk. Our stock is up. Our green initiatives are industry-leading. What exactly about my judgment concerns you? A food truck owner, Sophie? Another board member sighed. Think of the twins' future. Outside her office window, she could see the spot where Jack usually parked his truck, but it wasn't there today. The morning after the tabloid story broke, he'd arrived to find his tires slashed and graffiti sprayed across the side. Gold diggers. Kitchen. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Dad won't say he's worried, but I am. Someone posted bad reviews everywhere. They're saying his food made people sick. Sophie's hands tightened on the document. She knew who was behind the reviews. Mike had been spotted meeting with a rival food service company that had been trying to secure the Brighton Academy contract. The board's concerns extend beyond your personal life, Harrison continued. Dr. Chen has raised valid points about the twins' education. A summer in Singapore focused on academics rather than playing scientist at a food truck. My children are thriving, Sophie cut in. Their grades are excellent. Their social skills have improved, and their interest in practical science. Their father disagrees. The words hung in the air. James had always been her weak point, brilliant, ambitious, and utterly convinced he knew what was best for everyone. Another text lit up her phone, this time from Alice. Alexander's crying, but won't tell me why. Some boys at school said things about Dad and Mr. Morrison. Please come home. Sophie stood, gathering the papers into a neat pile. This meeting is over. Sophie, no. You want to discuss my leadership? Let's talk about how I've doubled our renewable energy patents. Want to question my judgment? Look at our profit margins. But my children and my personal life are not up for board approval. She strode out, her heels clicking against marble floors that suddenly felt like they belonged to another life. In the elevator, she called Jack. How bad is it? She asked when he answered. Nothing I can't handle. His voice was tired. Though Emma's school called. Some parents are concerned about her influence on their children. Jack, don't. This isn't your fault. A pause. The twins okay? No, school's been rough. James is using it to push for Singapore again. Maybe. Jack's voice caught. Maybe he's right. Maybe they'd be better off. Don't you dare finish that sentence. Sophie's voice surprised them both with its fierceness. My children haven't laughed this much in years. Emma's project is opening doors for kids across the city. We are not letting them win. She heard commotion in the background. Jack swore softly. What is it? Health inspector, third one this week. Funny how they keep showing up during peak hours. Sophie's mind raced. She still had contacts in the restaurant industry, people who owed her favors. A few calls could... Sophie. Jack seemed to read her thoughts. No corporate fixing, remember? This isn't fair. Life rarely is. He tried to sound light. But hey, at least that tabloid got my good side. A knock at her car window startled her. Maria stood outside, holding up her tablet with breaking news. Chentech board considers leadership change. Sources say CEO's personal life raises concerns. Sophie looked at the corporate document on the seat beside her, then at the empty spot where Jack's truck should be. Everything she'd built, her company, her children's happiness, this unexpected chance at love, was under attack. Her phone buzzed again. A photo from Emma. The twins in Jack's kitchen, all 3 children wearing Morrison's home cooking aprons, surrounded by science equipment and cooking supplies. They were laughing, flour in their hair, completely absorbed in whatever experiment recipe they'd invented. Below the photo was a message. Dad says, when stuff gets hard, we just need to make something good out of it. We're working on a new recipe. Want to help? Sophie touched the screen, her vision blurring slightly. Then she turned to Maria. Call my lawyer and find out who owns the empty storefront next to Jack's usual park spot. Sophie, they want a war? Fine, but they're about to learn that love makes the best armor. The Singapore Airlines ticket on Sophie's desk seemed to mock her with its simple promise of escape. First class, departing tomorrow. James had arranged everything. Take the twins for their much-needed academic intervention. Let the media storm die down. Give the board time to reconsider their position. It's the sensible choice, James had argued. Think of your legacy, Sophie. Everything your parents built. Now, alone in her office, she stared at the ticket while scrolling through her phone. Pictures of the past few months filled the screen. The twins and Emma conducting water tests by the river, Jack teaching Alexander how to knead dough, Alice falling asleep against her father's shoulder during movie night. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Her assistant entered with more papers requiring urgent attention. Supplier contracts, board recommendations, press statements, and underneath it all, a note from Brighton Academy. The twins' summer registration for Singapore was pending her signature. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Trucks repaired. Health department finally cleared us. Emma misses the twins. What he didn't say. Business was down 60%. 3 catering contracts cancelled. The school lunch program indefinitely postponed. Sophie picked up the plane ticket, feeling its heavy cardstock. Such a simple solution. Leave for the summer, protect her position, give Jack space to rebuild without the shadow of scandal. Across town, Jack faced his own difficult conversation. You have to let her go, Sarah's mother advised over coffee in his small kitchen. Sophie's world. It's not meant for people like us. Mom! Emma protested from her homework spot. I'm saying this because I love you both. Her voice softened. Sarah would have wanted you to protect Emma. These society people, they'll never truly accept you. Jack's gaze drifted to the cabinet where he'd stored Sophie's grandmother's tea set, left behind during their last family dinner before everything exploded. He should return it, should create distance, his phone chimed. A photo from Alice, their latest water quality results, showing significant improvements in the neighborhoods they'd targeted. We did it! The message read. Can we celebrate? At your truck? Before he could respond, another message appeared, this one from Alexander. Dad says we might go to Singapore. Please don't let them take us away. Emma leaned against his shoulder, reading the messages. Dad, we're not giving up, are we? The kitchen seemed full of ghosts. Sarah's dreams for their daughter, Sophie's laughter during impromptu cooking lessons, the twins' endless questions about every recipe. All the ways love could survive loss, bridge differences, create new families. His phone rang. Sophie's name lit up the screen. I can't do this, she said without preamble. The board? No. I can't pretend this is just about business. Jack, they're trying to make me choose between my company and my heart, and I keep thinking about that day by the river. Sophie, you jumped in without hesitation. No calculating risks, no weighing consequences, just love in action. Jack closed his eyes, remembering the cold water, the terror, the simple clarity of what mattered. The twins need stability, he said carefully. They need love. Their father offers summer science programs. You gave them family movie nights and cooking lessons and a sister they adore. Emma's grip on his arm tightened. But your company is strong enough to survive gossip. And if it isn't, she took a breath, then maybe it's time to build. Something new, something that matters more. Through the phone, Jack heard paper tearing. The plane ticket, he realized. Are you sure? No, Sophie admitted. I'm terrified. But I keep thinking about what you told the twins, that the best recipes come from experimenting, from being brave enough to try new combinations. Sarah's mother was still watching, concern etched on her face. But Emma was beaming already, texting the twins. So what now? Jack asked. Now we show them what happens when love refuses to follow anyone else's recipe. The torn plane ticket lay on Sophie's desk, no longer a temptation but a reminder. Sometimes the bravest choice was staying right where you belonged. The petition started small, just a few signatures from regular customers defending Morrison's home cooking against the fake reviews. Then Emma's science teacher shared it, praising the water quality project's impact on local communities. By morning, it had gone viral. Look at these comments, Emma said, scrolling through her tablet. They were back at their usual spot in the park, the morning sun warming the newly repainted truck. Best chili in the city, better with the new fusion menu. My kids learn more about science from their weekend experiments than a month of regular classes. Jack smiled as he prepped for the day, but his eyes kept drifting to the empty coffee cart spot where Maria usually set up. The twins hadn't visited in days. Sophie was dealing with the board's escalating demands. A commotion at the park entrance drew their attention. Maria was there, pushing her cart, but she wasn't alone. A line of other food truck vendors followed, positioning their vehicles in a protective circle around Jack's spot. Family stands with family, Maria declared, setting up her coffee station. Sophie sent me to make sure you don't run out of her. Special ginger blend. The other vendors nodded in agreement. They'd all faced their own battles with big businesses and health department harassment. Besides, added Rosa from the taco truck, my daughter's water testing kit arrived yesterday. The twins helped her apply for the grant. First time she's been excited about science. The morning crowd was different today. Parents whose children had participated in the water quality project came by, sharing stories of their kids' newfound interest in environmental science. Teachers from various schools discussed how the project could be expanded. Jack's phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. Turn on the news. The local station was running a story about their water quality findings. Community leaders were citing the data, demanding action for neglected neighborhoods. The camera panned to show students from different schools conducting tests, all wearing Morrison's Junior Scientists badges, something the twins had designed with Emma. Dad, Emma called from inside the truck. Brighton Academy is on the phone. They want to know if we can present our findings at next week's assembly. Tell them yes, came Sophie's voice. She approached the truck, the twins bouncing ahead to tackle Emma in a hug. The board can't ignore this kind of community impact. She looked tired but determined. Her usual corporate armor was replaced by casual clothes, and she carried a stack of papers. The petition, she explained, spreading them out. Over 10,000 signatures now, including some interesting names. 3 board members, 2 major shareholders, and the mayor. Jack examined the signatures, recognition dawning. These people have kids in the science program, or eat at food trucks, or just believe that love shouldn't have to follow corporate protocols. Sophie smiled. James is furious, of course. Says we're undermining the twins' academic future. Are we? They watched as the children proudly showed their latest experiments to a growing crowd of interested students and parents. Alexander was explaining water filtration methods with newfound confidence, while Alice and Emma demonstrated their testing procedures. No, Sophie said softly, we're teaching them something more important than academic success. We're showing them how to build bridges, not walls. The petition continued to circulate, gathering more signatures. Local businesses offered support, remembering how Jack had helped during tough times. Parents whose children had been inspired by the science project spoke out. Even some Brighton Academy board members admitted the program's educational value. Ms. Chen, a small girl, approached, holding a water testing kit. "Can I join the science?" "Team 2. Before Sophie could answer, the twins and Emma had surrounded the girl, eagerly explaining their project. Jack watched them. These children who saw no barriers between worlds. "You know," he said to Sophie, "your board was right about one thing." "Oh, this is about image, just not the kind they understand." He gestured to the scene before them. Food trucks serving diverse crowds, students sharing scientific discoveries, communities coming together over shared meals and common causes. "This is what success really looks like," Sophie agreed. "Not stock prices or society pages, but love in action," Jack finished, echoing her words from days before. The petition lay forgotten on the counter, its purpose already served. Some signatures carried more weight than others, but the most powerful endorsement was written in the smiles of children who had found their passion, and parents who had found their community. The microphone stood ready on the podium, Chentech's logo gleaming under the press room lights. Behind it, the quarterly earnings charts showed record growth, but that wasn't why every seat was filled. Reporters leaned forward, hungry for the real story. The CEO, the food truck owner, and the scandal that threatened an empire. "Ready?" Sophie asked Jack, straightening his tie. Not borrowed this time, she'd bought him one that matched the twins' school uniforms. A gentle bridge between their worlds. "No," he admitted, "but when has that ever stopped us?" They could hear the crowd through the door, board members, shareholders, media. And somewhere in the front row, James Chen, still convinced he could protect their children from this embarrassment. Emma poked her head in. "We're all set up outside." "Outside?" Jack questioned. Sophie's smile was mischievous. "I thought we'd change the venue slightly." She led him through a side door to find the press conference had been moved to the plaza. Outside Chentech's headquarters, food trucks lined the square. All their friends from the park, serving corporate executives alongside construction workers. In the center, the children had set up their water quality demonstration. "Ms. Chen," a reporter called out, "is this some kind of publicity stunt?" Sophie approached the microphone, now set up in the open air. "This is a lesson in value, not stock value. Though our numbers are excellent, but the kind of value that doesn't show up on quarterly reports." She gestured to where the twins and Emma were conducting water tests with a group of interested students. 2 months ago, these children started asking questions about water quality in underserved neighborhoods. They didn't care about property, values, or social barriers. They saw a problem and wanted to help. "With all due respect," a board member interrupted, "this isn't about a school science project." "Actually," Jack stepped up to the microphone, his voice steady, "it's exactly about that, about seeing potential where others see problems, about building bridges instead of walls." Whispers rippled through the crowd as he spoke. Some shareholders frowned, but others were watching their children gravitate toward the science demonstration. "When I jumped into that river," Jack continued, "I wasn't thinking about social class or corporate image. I was thinking about 2 kids who needed help. Everything that followed, the friendship, the science project, the community response, that was just love doing what it naturally does, bringing people together." "This is absurd," James Chen stood up. "Sophie, think about what you're risking. The company is stronger when we remember its purpose." Sophie cut in. "My parents built Chentech to solve problems, to make life better for everyone, not just shareholders. Look around." The crowd did. They saw students from exclusive private schools working alongside kids from public schools, all excited about science. They saw businessmen in suits discovering the joy of authentic street food. They saw barriers dissolving over shared meals and common causes. Our quarterly reports show innovation is up, Sophie continued. You know why? Because we started listening to different voices. Because we remembered that good ideas can come from anywhere, even a food truck kitchen turned science lab. The twins had begun distributing their latest water quality reports, professionally bound thanks to their mother's resources, but bearing Jack's food truck logo alongside Chentex's. So yes, Sophie's voice strengthened, I fell in love with a food truck owner. But more importantly, I remembered what love can build when we let it. Bridges, communities, futures. If that costs me my position, so be it. Some things matter more than stock prices. A slow clapping started from the food truck area. Maria led the applause, soon joined by students, parents, and even some board members who had watched their own children discover science through the Twins project. The board calls for an immediate vote, Harrison announced, standing up. Seconded, said another member, but she was smiling as she watched her daughter excitedly participate in the water testing. Jack reached for Sophie's hand as the vote began. The microphone caught his whisper, Whatever happens, we're in this together. Together, Sophie agreed, watching their children's proud faces as they demonstrated their findings to the crowd. The vote would matter for Chentex's future. But in all the ways that truly counted, they had already won. The microphone stood. Witness as old barriers crumbled, replaced by something stronger. A community built on love, courage, and the simple power of people coming together over good food and common dreams. The key gleamed in Jack's palm, new brass that hadn't yet been dulled by use. The house it opened wasn't as grand as Sophie's penthouse or as humble as his old apartment. Instead, it was something uniquely theirs. A brownstone with a professional, kitchen on the ground floor and enough space above for their blended family. The previous owner used it as a cooking school, Sophie explained, watching his face. The realtor mentioned something about the kitchen needing updating, but it's perfect. Jack breathed, taking in the industrial-grade appliances and vast counter space. The twins and Emma were already racing through the rooms above, their footsteps echoing with possibility. "Dad," Emma called down, "there's a whole room we can use as a lab." "With proper ventilation this time," Sophie added quickly, remembering some of their more explosive experiments. The morning sun streamed through large windows, illuminating spaces that seemed designed for their unique needs. The kitchen could serve as a test space for Jack's expanding business. The basement had potential for a small production facility. The garden out back was perfect for growing herbs and vegetables and conducting soil quality tests, as the twins had already noticed. "Look what we found!" Alexander bounded down the stairs, holding a dusty sign. The house used to be called the Cooking Academy. "Now it can be the Science and Cooking Academy," Alice suggested, following her brother. Jack and Sophie exchanged glances. They'd been discussing how to combine their passions into something meaningful. The food truck business was growing, with community-focused catering and educational programs. Sophie's board had eventually voted to keep her as CEO, impressed by the positive publicity and genuine community impact of their initiatives. "Speaking of academies," Sophie said carefully, "James called this morning." Jack tensed slightly. After the press conference, his attempts to interfere had decreased, but he still made occasional noise about the twins' education. "He wants to contribute to their science program," Sophie continued. "Actually seemed impressed by their latest project results. The twins had expanded their water quality initiative into a full environmental science program, now running in schools across the city. Emma had become a student leader, mentoring younger participants." "Really?" Jack set the key down on the counter, their counter now. "No mentions of Singapore? Only that they might consider presenting their findings at a conference there, as a family." The word family still held new weight. They were figuring it out day by day, Chinese festivals alongside American holidays, fusion recipes that honored both traditions, science experiments that brought together different communities. We should celebrate, Jack decided, opening cupboards to check what equipment was already there. First meal in our new kitchen. Can we help? The children asked in unison. Of course. Jack smiled. Every good experiment needs a team. They fell into their familiar rhythm. Jack directing the cooking, Sophie handling logistics, the children measuring ingredients with scientific precision. Emma had inherited her father's instinct for flavors, while the twins treated each recipe like a chemistry experiment. Remember our first cooking lesson? Alice asked, carefully measuring soy sauce. You mean the dumpling explosion? Emma laughed. That was a valuable lesson in steam pressure, Alexander defended. Sophie watched them work together, these children who had erased all barriers between them. The key on the counter caught the light, reminding her of other new beginnings. The expanded food truck business, now a recognized educational partner with local schools. The Chen Tech Foundation's updated mission to support community science initiatives. Their upcoming wedding, planned with input from all three children. What are you thinking? Jack asked softly, coming up behind her. About recipes, she answered. Not just for food, but for life. How sometimes the best ones come from mixing unexpected ingredients. He understood, as he always did. Their love story wasn't conventional. Billionaire CEO and food truck owner brought together by a river. Rescue and children's curiosity. But like any good recipe, it worked. The key had found its place on a hook by the door, ready to unlock each new day in their shared life. Above it, they'd hang the sign, Morrison Chen Family Kitchen and Laboratory. Because sometimes home isn't just a place. It's a hypothesis proved right, a recipe perfected through love, a family blended into something greater than the sum of its parts. The family portrait session wasn't going as planned. The photographer kept suggesting poses that Sophie called artificially formal and Jack termed stuffy. The twins couldn't stop giggling, and Emma was more interested in explaining light, refraction to them than looking at the camera. Perhaps something more traditional, the photographer suggested, eyeing their casual clothes and the kitchen backdrop they'd insisted on using. This is our tradition, Jack said firmly, rolling up his sleeves. Kids, who wants to make dumplings while we do this? Immediately, three faces lit up. Sophie smiled, remembering how their first dumpling-making session had ended in flour-covered chaos. Now it was their go-to activity for family bonding. But the formal portraits, the photographer protested. We'll show who we really are, Sophie finished, taking off her blazer. A family that cooks together, experiments together, grows together. The camera clicked as they worked. Jack demonstrating the perfect pleating technique. Sophie measuring ingredients with the twins' scientific precision. Emma experimenting with new filling combinations. Their hands moved in comfortable synchronization. Three children and two adults creating something together. Mum, remember that investor who said we shouldn't be so public about the food truck connection? Alice asked, carefully crimping a dumpling edge. The one who sold his shares? Sophie nodded. Turns out his daughter just enrolled in our summer science program. Their educational initiative had exploded beyond expectations. The combination of hands-on cooking and scientific exploration attracted students from all backgrounds. The waiting list grew longer each semester. Did you see today's numbers? Alexander added excitedly. Our environmental impact report made the national news. The Children's Water Quality Project had evolved into a comprehensive citizen science program. Schools across the country were adopting their methodology, proving that curiosity knew no social bounds. Speaking of news, Emma said, Dad, some food critic wrote another article about how you're compromising authenticity by mixing cuisines. Jack laughed, showing the twins how to add just enough ginger to the filling. Should we tell him about the 3-star restaurant that just ordered our fusion sauce line? Their commercial kitchen in the basement was working overtime to keep up with demand. Traditional recipe meets scientific precision. It was becoming their signature in more ways than one. The photographer had stopped directing poses, instead capturing natural moments. Sophie teaching Emma the proper way to hold chopsticks, Jack helping Alexander measure pH levels in a marinade, Alice explaining molecular gastronomy to a fascinated delivery person. Mrs. Chen Morrison, their assistant, poked her head in. The school board meeting is in an hour. They're still debating the expansion of the science program. Tell them I'll bring samples, Jack said, winking at Sophie. They'd learned that even the most resistant administrators became more open-minded over good food. And the dumpling testing data, the twins chimed in. They'd turned their latest cooking session into an experiment on optimal filling-to-wrapper ratios. The photographer lowered his camera, finally understanding. This wasn't just a family portrait. It was a manifesto. Every dumpling, every experiment, every shared laugh was a statement about what family could be. One more thing, Emma said, pulling out her tablet. Remember that girl who said her parents wouldn't let her join the program because it wasn't exclusive enough? They nodded. It had been a reminder that not everyone embraced their bridge building. She came by the truck today, said she convinced them by showing them our published research paper, the one about community-based environmental science. Sophie asked proudly. That's the one. Her mom wants to volunteer now. Jack gathered everyone for one last photo, their hands flower-dusted, their smiles genuine. The portrait would show a family that had found its own recipe for happiness. Equal parts love and courage, seasoned with science and cooking, simmered in the heat of challenge until all the ingredients became something new and wonderful. Perfect, the photographer said softly, capturing the moment. He was right, not because they were perfect, but because they were perfectly themselves, a CEO who rolled up her sleeves to make dumplings, a chef who helped design science experiments, and 3 children who saw no boundaries between worlds. The jade ring sat heavy in Jack's pocket as he prepped for their weekly family dinner. It had belonged to Sophie's grandmother, a gift from Maria, who'd kept it safe all these years, waiting for the right moment. Is everything ready? Emma whispered, helping him arrange the dishes. The twins were upstairs, supposedly keeping their mother busy with a science presentation, but really giving Jack time to prepare. Almost. Jack checked the traditional Chinese dishes he'd spent weeks perfecting, each one holding special meaning. Long-life noodles, double happiness cakes, and dumplings with a modern twist. Your mother's letter, right here. Sophie's mother had written her blessing in elegant Chinese characters, accepting Jack and Emma into their family lineage. It had arrived yesterday, along with detailed instructions for honoring tradition. While embracing their unique circumstances, the sound of footsteps announced Sophie's arrival. She stopped in the doorway, taking in the transformed kitchen. Red paper lanterns hung from the ceiling, and every surface held dishes that bridged their 2 worlds. "What's all this?" she asked, though her smile suggested she knew something was coming. "Well," Alexander began their rehearsed introduction, "we've been studying cultural fusion and the chemistry of cooking," Alice continued, "and the science of love," Emma finished. Jack stepped forward, suddenly nervous despite all their planning. "Sophie Chen, who jumped into my messy food, truck life and made it better, who taught us that experiments don't always need perfect conditions," the twins added, "who showed me that families can grow in unexpected ways," Emma said softly. Jack knelt, pulling out the jade ring. "Your grandmother told Maria that this ring should go to someone who understands that love, like jade, becomes more beautiful with time and care. Will you marry me?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears as she recognized the ring. "You found it?" "Maria helped. She said your grandmother would have approved of a man who feeds both body and soul, who learns to make proper dumplings," Alexander chimed in, "and respects tradition while making new ones," Alice added. "And loves us all exactly as we are," Emma concluded. Sophie touched the ring, her fingers trembling slightly. "My grandmother. used to say that jade must be carved to show its true beauty. Like people, it takes time and patience to reveal what's inside. Is that a yes? The children asked in unison. She laughed through her tears. Of course it's a yes, though I think you all knew that before I did. As Jack slipped the ring onto her finger, the kids produced their own surprise. A scientific paper titled The Perfect Proposal, a Multivariable Analysis of Family Formation. We documented everything, Alexander announced proudly. Chemical reactions in cooking, cultural significance of symbols, even the psychological impact of shared meals, Alice explained, with peer review by Maria. And Mom's assistant, Emma added. Sophie examined their work, laughing at their detailed charts and graphs. You turned my proposal into a science experiment? With very positive results, Jack said, pulling her close. The jade ring caught the light, its ancient surface holding centuries of tradition, while embracing their modern love story. Like them, it was a bridge between worlds, proving that the most precious things gain value not from perfection, but from the journey they take. There's just one more experiment, the twins announced, producing a small cake. We calculated the exact chemical reaction needed. The cake promptly exploded in a shower of sparkles and sugar, making everyone laugh. Some experiments, after all, were more about joy than precision. I think, Sophie said, admiring how the jade ring looked against their flour-dusted, sparkle-covered hands. This is exactly the kind of proposal we deserve. The kitchen, their heart, their laboratory, their gathering place, had witnessed their journey from strangers to family. Now it would see them take the next step, blending traditions as naturally as they blended recipes and experiments. Love, like the best science and the finest cooking, was about having the courage to try new combinations and the wisdom to treasure what worked. 1 year later, the new logo gleamed on their flagship location, Morrison Chen's Kitchen and Lab, where science meets soul. The design merged a test tube with a whisk, perfectly capturing their unique approach to food and education. Mom! Dad! They're here! Emma called from the front window. A line of yellow school buses was pulling up, bringing the first wave of summer program students. Jack adjusted his chef's coat, now bearing both the original food truck logo and their new emblem, and watched Sophie finish arranging the welcome packets. Each contained a lab coat, cooking apron, and the course outline they'd developed together. Culinary science, a hands-on exploration of food, chemistry, and community. Ready? Sophie asked, straightening his collar out of habit. As ready? As serving 300 kids can be, he replied, kissing her cheek. The twins burst in from the test kitchen, where they'd been setting up the day's experiments. At 13, they were now official junior instructors, proud to share their expertise with newcomers. The pH meters are calibrated, Alexander reported, and the source samples are labeled for blind testing, Alice added. Temperature probes, all synchronized, Emma confirmed, checking her tablet. At 15, she ran the data collection side of their program with impressive efficiency. The first students began filing in, a diverse mix from across the city. Their original water quality project had evolved into a full STEM education initiative, with the food truck business expanding into a chain of educational kitchens. Each location combined a working restaurant with hands-on science learning. Welcome to Morrison Chen's, the twins greeted each group, passing out safety goggles with the enthusiasm only teenage scientists could muster. Today's lesson, Jack announced, is about transformation, how heat and time change not just food, but understanding. And like any good experiment, Sophie continued, we'll follow the scientific method while creating something delicious. Their staff, a mix of chefs and science teachers, moved among the stations, helping students don protective gear and explaining the day's objectives. The kitchen hummed with energy, Bunsen burners firing up alongside professional stoves. Mrs. Chen Morrison, a small girl raised her hand. Is it true this all started with a food truck? Sophie smiled, remembering that first morning by the river. Actually, it started with a rescue. Sometimes the best things in life come from unexpected moments of courage. And stubbornness, Jack added with a wink. And love, the twins chimed in. And science, Emma concluded. The logo caught the morning light, casting a shadow that merged with the original food truck parked proudly outside. Now a mobile teaching unit that visited underserved neighborhoods. They'd kept it as a reminder of where they started, though its interior now housed as much laboratory equipment as cooking gear. James Chen appeared at the door, right on schedule for his monthly visit. He'd finally accepted their success, even contributing to the educational foundation they'd established. The Singapore conference wants you to keynote, he told Sophie. All of you, actually. They're fascinated by your integrated approach to STEM education. Field trip, the twins exclaimed, already planning experiments they could demonstrate. The kitchen filled with the sounds of learning, questions being asked, hypotheses formed, measurements taken with careful precision. Every station combined the warmth of home cooking with the excitement of discovery. Jack watched Sophie move. Among the students, equally comfortable explaining molecular gastronomy or demonstrating proper dumpling technique. Their wedding ring caught the light alongside her jade engagement ring, old and new, tradition and innovation, just like them. Time to start cooking, he announced to the room. And experimenting, the children added, because that's what their life had become, one continuous experiment in love, learning, and the courage to combine unexpected ingredients into something wonderful. The logo said it all. Science and soul, heart and mind, family and future. A recipe that proved that sometimes the most unlikely combinations create the most perfect results. The end.